Recently, lots of different brands have been releasing Hall effect magnetic switch keyboards, and with Keychron, they're no different. And their most recent keyboard, the Keychron K2 HE, I'd argue is the most versatile magnetic switch keyboard currently available, with the added bonus of the fact it's actually reasonably priced. So my initial plan had been to do just a sort of standard review video of this keyboard, but instead I've ended up deciding to compare the special edition K2 HE to its original mechanical counterpart, and that's the Keychron K2, and I'll explain why I'm doing this in a little bit. So let's start with the main components of these two keyboards. Now, both of these keyboards have a 75% layout with 84 keys, and I have the Keychron K2 HE in an ISO layout, which as you can see means I have the larger L-shaped enter key, whereas I have an ANSI layout for the K2. And none of this should be too surprising, as Keychron have based the layout of the K2 HE on their original K2. For the K2 HE, I have the special edition version, which means that the keyboard that I have comes with rosewood edges on either side with an aluminium top and bottom to complete this frame. This helps the keyboard have less of a typical gamery vibe that you get with Hall effect keyboards, and instead gives you a magnetic switch keyboard that looks good with any desk setup. The keyboard also comes with this brown escape keycap, which kind of matches the rosewood. Annoyingly, the ISO layout doesn't come with the matching brown enter key that you get with the ANSI layout for the K2 HE. I'm not really sure why Keychron have chosen not to give you this key with the ISO layout, but it's just something annoying that they've done. Now, like the K2 HE, the original K2 comes with an aluminium frame, although it does obviously exclude the additional rosewood sides. However, despite both cases having an aluminium frame, the actual keyboard itself is plastic. But given the aluminium frames, both keyboards do weigh quite a bit, with the original K2 weighing around 780 grams and the new special edition K2 HE weighing 965 grams. They're both fairly sturdy keyboards, and you don't really get any flex with both of them. Also not going to move anywhere on your desk when you're typing. Now, whilst it's clear that the design of the K2 HE has been based around the original K2, it does have two different colour schemes. The special edition K2 comes in either white with accessory rosewood or black with accessory rosewood. The original K2 mechanical keyboard, on the other hand, comes in Keychron's traditional two-tone grey with the classic orange escape keycap. And technically you can get two different colour options for the original K2, but all that's really changed is the different shades of grey for the keycaps. Both of these keyboards also have the exact same dimensions. Both the K2 mechanical keyboard and the K2 HE have a width of 31.6 centimeters and a depth of 12.7 centimeters. They both also come with plastic feet on the underside so you can adjust the typing angle. They both have a typing angle of 5 degrees, 9 degrees and 12 degrees when used with the feet. Now, this is the most obvious difference with these keyboards, and it seems to be the way a lot of keyboard companies are going, where they're taking their mechanical version of a keyboard and changing them and then re-releasing them as magnetic switch keyboards. If you want to see me discuss how Newfie have done this with some of their keyboards, you can click the link up here. So we start with the original K2 mechanical keyboard, which you can get with hot swappable Gateron switches, and you can purchase the keyboard with either red linear switches, brown tactile switches, and the blue clicky switches. If you get the hot swappable version, you can change them for any normal profile 3-pin or 5-pin switches that you like. However, I don't have the hot swappable version, but for a change I actually went with the blue Gateron clicky switches, which is a type of switch I've never had before getting this keyboard. And if I'm being honest, they're kind of annoyingly loud, and they kind of do feel a bit cheaper, for whatever better way of describing them. You'll be able to hear them in the sound test later in this video. Now, the new K2 HE keyboard doesn't use traditional mechanical switches, but instead uses magnetic switches. And this means that you can adjust how far the key travels before the keyboard recognises that the key is being pressed. This is also known as the actuation point. Now, the benefit of this means that you can change the actuation point so you barely have to press the key before it recognises that it's being pressed. And this can help if you're gaming, as you'll have a much shorter response time. Or it can also help if you want to be really precise with your typing, as you can increase the actuation point, and that means you're really going to have to press the key quite hard for it to register that the key is being pressed. Keychron K2 HE doesn't give you a choice with the switches that you get with the keyboard, so the only option you have is Gateron double rail magnetic nebula switches. And these switches come pre-lubed, and they have a double rail structure, which essentially prevents you from swapping them out for other types of magnetic switch. This does mean that there's only currently 3 switches that you could potentially use with this keyboard, and that's the Dawn switches, the Nebula switches, and the Aurora switches, which are all Gateron switches, which are available on the Keychron website. And again, all these switches are linear switches, but the main difference is the start and end force of each switch, with the Nebula switches sitting somewhere in the middle between the 3 options. Moving on to the keycaps, and as you can see, the keycaps of the K2 HE are predominantly black, except for the brown escape key. All of the keycaps of the K2 HE are double shot PBT, so that they should last a long time. These keycaps have more of a texture to them, whilst also being more durable. Basically, they're not going to start to shine from the oil from your fingertips over time. I should also point out that the special edition version does not have shine through keycaps, whereas the standard version of the K2 HE does. With the special edition, this can be a bit annoying if you're typing at night because it can be really difficult to see the keycaps, especially given that the backlighting is north facing and it isn't that bright. The original K2 mechanical keyboard, on the other hand, does have shine through keycaps, which come in two shades of grey with the standard orange escape key. And this is typical of all original Keychron keyboards. Although the keycaps themselves are shine through, they are made from ABS plastic, so you will notice some wear from them over time and your fingers can leave marks on the keys. The original mechanical K2 has OEM style keycaps, basically your standard keycap profile that you get with lots of different mechanical keyboards. The K2 HE, on the other hand, has two keycap options depending on whether you get the standard edition or the special edition. Standard edition K2 HE has cherry profile keycaps, whereas the special edition K2 HE has an OSA profile. Both the Keychron K2 HE and the original K2 have a battery life of up to 240 hours with the RGB backlighting turned off and 72 hours with the RGB backlighting turned on. Despite this battery life being really good, I'm slightly disappointed that Keychron haven't managed to improve the battery life of the K2 HE, given it has been quite a while since they released the mechanical K2. Both keyboards connect your device by a USB-C cable, and the port for this can be found on the left-hand side of the keyboard. Both keyboards do provide you with an angled USB-C cable for this, and that can help to keep the cable on your desk out of the way. There are also two switches on the left side, one to switch between Mac and Windows, and another switch to switch between the different connectivity options, whether that's Bluetooth, a wired connection, or 2.4 GHz wireless connection. Both keyboards can also be used to connect up to 3 devices at any one time. The mechanical Keychron K2 can normally be purchased from the Keychron website for $94, although it's currently on sale for $70.50 at the time of making this video. And I think that's a really good price for a decent mechanical keyboard with lots of different switch options. The Keychron K2 HE, on the other hand, is $130 for the standard edition and $140 for the special edition. And to be honest, for the $10 difference, I would definitely choose the special edition, as it just looks better. It doesn't look like every other magnetic switch keyboard out there, and I prefer the OSA keycap profile to the cherry profile on the standard edition. The special edition version also gives you the option to engrave the side of the keyboard, but will cost you an extra $20. I haven't bothered with this, as it would have just taken longer for the keyboard to get delivered, and it's not something I was particularly bothered about in the first place. Now, in order to customize your K2 HE and utilize all the benefits of having a Hall effect keyboard, which can be used for gaming, for example, Keychron uses an open source QMK firmware, and this can be opened through the Keychron Launcher web app, and through this you can individually adjust the actuation point of each key, and you can create personalized macro commands and create key combinations that can be used for gaming. You can also use it to adjust the RGB effects of your keyboard, as well as using it for firmware updates. The launcher itself is fairly intuitive, and it makes it easy to use, even if it's your first Hall effect keyboard. Needless to say that you can't mess about with actuation points and use rapid trigger with the original K2 keyboard. Somewhat surprisingly, Keychron haven't really updated their K2 keyboard in a long time, despite the fact that it remains a really popular mechanical keyboard. In saying that, that's maybe why they've chosen the K2 as their base model for the recent Hall effect keyboard. And despite their differences in switches and the customization options available, there are aspects of these keyboards which are very similar. If you are looking at purchasing the new K2 HE, I definitely recommend getting the special edition version. I personally just think it looks a lot better than the standard version, and it's one of the only Hall effect keyboards out there that doesn't just scream gaming keyboard when you look at it on a desk. I also think the keyboard itself is extremely versatile, and I genuinely enjoy typing on it. If you have found this video useful, please give it a like, Check out some of my other videos and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.